We round up the latest news and rumors about your favorite team. Is the Suns' asking price on Kevin Durant too high? Tyler Herro is going to get paid how much? We'll answer that and more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube and make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We're catching up on a bunch of news, including a potential shakeup to the Heat's coaching staff and what Tyler Herro's next contract could be worth. But let's start with one of the big names expected to move this offseason, Kevin Durant. It looks like several teams are going to be chasing Durant this offseason, including the recently eliminated Timberwolves, the recently eliminated Knicks, potentially, who also recently fired their coach. But the reporting around Durant lately is that he's going to get traded by the June 25th draft, or at least he's expected to get traded by then, and that the Suns are looking for a center in return. That ever since basically trading away DeAndre Ayton, that position has been a little bit of a sinkhole for them, and they haven't been able to find a consistent answer there. So they want to trade Durant by draft night. They want to get a center back in return. The Timberwolves, the Knicks, the Rockets, the Spurs, those teams are also sort of in the mix. There's a bunch of teams now kind of being linked, rumored a little bit to Kevin Durant, and obviously the Miami Heat are going to be interested in it as well. But what do you make of this report, and do you think that the Suns could get what they want?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the Suns are a team that's looking to retool and not quite tear everything down because they're still going to retain Devin Booker, and they have no choice but to retain Bradley Beal given his no trade clause. So I think it's just a matter of adding the correct pieces to that roster and hoping that they can remain somewhat competitive. And I think a lot of what they're looking for is probably some draft capital as well. As far as the center position is concerned, yeah, they can absolutely get it. You look at those three teams. You could go after Mitchell Robinson in New York, Naz Reid in Minnesota, maybe even Kel'el Ware in South Florida. So I think there's options there in terms of who they're looking to potentially deal Durant to and getting the right player back that makes the deal a little bit easier for them to swallow.
Heck, I mean, you can get Karl-Anthony Towns from the Knicks. Why stop at Mitchell Robinson, right? I mean,
that doesn't.
You don't like that for Phoenix?
I mean, I love that for Phoenix. I just don't think the Knicks are willing to give up on Cat just yet, especially after they trade Randall. I mean, well, I don't think he proved himself unplayable. Okay.
And the only reason I bring it up is because if that's who you're asking for, is that something that the Heat can compete with if all they can offer is Kel'el Ware? Because you don't trade Bam at his age for a guy 10 years older in Kevin Durant. And if Durant is going to come to Miami, he'd presumably want to play with the guy he won a gold medal with. And you don't trade Bam for Kevin Durant. Not like, I don't care what your context is. Like, not at this stage.
No.
Karl-Anthony Towns, maybe. Right? Like, I see where you're going with this, but after firing Tibbs, I wouldn't do it if I were the Knicks, to be clear, but I could talk myself into it before I could talk myself into trading Bam for Durant.
Is firing Thibodeau the precursor to trading away Karl-Anthony Towns? Like, is that the idea here? Because, I mean, I know they started both of them eventually in the Pacers series, and I know Towns certainly had some moments there where he was disappointing. But is Kevin Durant and Mitchell Robinson as your new starting backcourt or front court, is that enough better than Durant and Karl-Anthony Towns? Because I don't think so. I mean, you can ask for Karl-Anthony Towns, but
it's
I think
better
for New
defensively. My concern with adding Durant to Towns is Durant's presence on the Knicks roster would almost neutralize what Towns does, which is score from the perimeter, essentially.
That's fair.
And he kind of scores from his tape. It's like, well, we already have Towns. Why do we need Durant? We have a 7-footer who can shoot. Maybe that's a really dumb way to look at it, but I'd almost prefer to have a defensive-minded center with Durant as opposed to a guy like Towns with Durant.
Yeah.
But then again, if it's Durant, Towns, and Jalen Brunson, I guess you just say, like, we'll have the best offense in the NBA and just let defense be damned. But we've seen how that's worked out for Durant's last two teams in Brooklyn and Phoenix. It just hasn't worked as well. But if you're Miami, I think what this makes clear to me is that they're going to be asking for Kel'el Ware and perhaps even demanding Kel'el Ware, and they'll have the leverage to get Kel'el Ware.
Yeah.
Because every Heat fan is pretty reticent,
Yes.
nailed it, to throw Ware into a deal for Durant. And so every fake trade that you and I see is Jovic or Jaquez, really. If it's like they want a young player, throw Jaquez and Terry Rozier and a second-round pick to Phoenix for Kevin Durant, or whatever it is. But I make fun of it. But yeah, I mean, even the trades that you and I have batted around, it's like Wiggins, Duncan Robinson, a couple of firsts. Would they want Jaime? Would they want Jovic? No. They're going to want Kel'el Ware. That's who they're going to want. And so I think Heat fans have to be prepared with the reality of, if you get Durant, it probably will cost you Kel'el Ware.
That's certainly a bitter pill to swallow, I think, because obviously in the short term, Durant is the better player. Of that, there's no doubt. And if you think otherwise, then I'm not sure how we can help you here. But I mean, I think there's also the idea that Ware is going to blossom into a very solid player. I think you look at his ceiling, that's hard to see, really. I can't. I mean, the potential for him to be a floor spacing big that can shot blocks, a 3-and-B center. I mean, that's a very rare commodity in the NBA, and you can't really find players like that. And so if you can potentially mold Ware into that, and if he can continue to bulk up and be much more of an interior presence, both offensively and specifically defensively, in terms of rebounding, we saw what happened with Jared Allen and how he was able to manhandle Ware. But if you can get him to that next level, I mean, that's a lot of potential to give up. And I can understand why Phoenix is tantalized by the idea of adding something like that. That's a running partner for Devin Booker for the next 6 to 7 years, at least, maybe even longer. So that is definitely the key addition that they would be looking for. And it makes a lot of sense. Now, from the Heat's perspective, can they afford to give him up? It depends on what they're looking to do, right? The question is, can you sit and punt on this season and maybe the next couple of years rather than making an obvious win now move? Because is the trio of Tyler Herro, Kevin Durant, and Bam Adebayo, plus whatever else you're able to sign and add to that core, enough to contend for a title, or at least contend for the Eastern Conference Championship? And is that enough to be willing to sacrifice Kel'el Ware after just one season in Miami?
Right. And if you've already committed to trading for Kevin Durant, you've kind of already decided that you're playing for the short term. So it's not this simple, but you almost might as well just trade Kel'el Ware if you've committed to trading for Kevin Durant, right?
If we know anything about this front office, that move is done. That move is done. Like, I mean, Lamar Odom from the time they traded, I think so. If you look at Caron Butler and Lamar Odom from 2004 on, they had better careers than the 2.5 seasons that Shaquille O'Neal contributed to the Miami Heat. But what happened? They got a championship. So I think
Odom
in terms of,
I don't know about Butler.
He won one with the Dallas Mavericks in 2011.
Yeah, but he wasn't like a main piece like Shaq.
Well, he was hurt.
In 06. Yeah,
he was hurt. I know. Look, there was a lot. You can't say that the move was a bad one. It worked out
right. Exactly, and that's the thing, right? Is you trade the long-term piece for the short-term success, and that's just what and for every fan that wants to trade quarters for dollars, it's no, you got to give something up. And nobody here thinks that Kel'el Ware has the ceiling that Kevin Durant has, right? Kevin Durant is an all-time top 15, top 20 player of all time. Kel'el Ware is not going to be that. But Kel'el Ware could be better in 5 years than Kevin Durant is in 5 years. Heck, I mean, he could be in the league at the very, so
he could be,
What you're thinking about is, because you're right about the 3-and-B potential. Like, those guys are so rare. They're so rare. Guys who can legitimately play defense and legitimately space the floor. You also don't know that Kel'el Ware is going to be that. And you're giving up on that potential for a chance to chase an NBA Finals berth within the next couple of years. I don't think that calculus is super easy. I think this is exactly what gets a lot of teams into trouble is they trade that long-term potential for short-term
Right. Right.
boosts or a little bit of a marginal short-term upgrade. And they turn around in 2 or 3 years and like, oh my God, we have no assets and all of our players are old and we got to hit a hard reset. I don't really think that that's what a Durant trade would be because I think that this team could be a Durant and smaller pieces away from legitimately being in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. So, but you got to get all those moves right.
But that's not enough. Like I'm going to take a hard line on this. I'm going to take a hard line on this. They're not going to beat Oklahoma City, and that's basically what you're looking at. You're looking at an OKC team that's probably going to, in my opinion, dog walk the Indiana Pacers, which are leagues better than the Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the case. You're basically setting yourself up to you're competing for a chance to go in front of the firing squad, and that's not going to be enough. Like whatever it is that you can do with Kevin Durant,
don't look at it that way.
Enough to win a title. I know they don't. They don't.
But you're looking.
I'm just saying my opinion.
Okay,
I wouldn't do it. This team keeps claiming that it's their goal, their ultimate goal. Well, guess what? You're not going to be able to accomplish that with just KD. And as much as I don't think that Ware is going to reach superstar potential, I think he's a better piece for the next 5 to 10 seasons than what KD is going to be. And I don't think you're going to be able to get to that point where you're going to be good enough to compete for those teams. So why not just invest? I'm not saying they shouldn't get another star player if they can. I just don't know that you want to sacrifice 10 potential great seasons, 10 really good seasons. Let's not even say great. Let 10 really good seasons of Kel'el Ware for 1 and 2 very good seasons of Kevin Durant, because he's no longer. I mean, he's great, but he's no longer going to be the one who can.
But you're guaranteed. You're guaranteeing a couple of years of very, very like all NBA level Kevin Durant production.
I know.
The possibility of perhaps some good to very good Kel'el Ware years. Look, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just presenting. I'm presenting the other side of the argument. Yeah. This is not an easy
get
decision.
It too.
And I think there's a lot of people that would say it's going to cost you Kel'el Ware for Kevin Durant. Do it, right? Like they just do it. Like it's a no-brainer to them. I don't think it's that easy of a decision. But I also wouldn't take the hard line of this doesn't make you an NBA Finals team, then don't do it. I think that there's a lot of value in let's make ourselves substantially better. Let's go get Kevin Durant. Let's be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference and see what happens because, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could roll an ankle in the playoffs next year, and then the whole league is wide. The Eastern Conference is already wide open, right? You never know.
That's true.
And this Heat team has always done. Not since the Big 3 era have they been favorites to make the finals, and they've made the finals twice because they've given themselves at least a chance. And right now they have zero chance with this roster, including Kel'el Ware being on it, at least for next year. All right. We're going to talk about a couple other news items here. Were the Heat close to shaking up the coaching staff? We'll talk about that. But before we do that, TYLER HERRO, his next contract. We're getting a little bit of clarity into what that might look like. One NBA insider has an idea of what it could cost the Heat to keep TYLER HERRO around. Some fans think it's too much. We'll tell you what we think after this here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Let's talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough. It's men's mental health. There's this pressure to always keep it together, to perform, to provide, never show weakness. But the truth is, real strength comes from opening up and taking care of your mental well-being. Every year, 6 million men in the U.S. experience depression, and many go undiagnosed. But talking to someone, whether it's a friend, a loved one, or a therapist, can make a huge difference. Therapy isn't just for crisis moments. It's great for learning how to set boundaries, to build healthy coping tools, and to be the best version of yourself. And with over 35,000 licensed professionals, BetterHelp makes it easy to find a therapist who understands you. You can connect with someone from anywhere. You can switch therapists at any time, and you can fit sessions into your schedule with just a click. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. So talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off on their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
So we are going to dive more into the Kevin Durant, Kel'el Ware discussion next week. We're going to do our pros and cons. Is it worth trading Kel'el Ware for Kevin Durant. As we've already discussed, not an easy decision. Let us know what you think in the comments section. Email us, Twitter, YouTube community comments, etc. But let's move on to this next news item here. Bobby Marks wrote that he expects TYLER HERRO to sign for 3 years at just over $109 million total extension this summer. As we know, Herro is extension eligible this offseason. They could also wait until next summer, which seems to be what Pat Riley and TYLER HERRO indicated they'd be okay with doing. But you've got Bobby Marks writing that he expects HERRO to sign, again, 3 years, just over $109 million this summer. That's about $50 million a season. That's the max. Now, my question to you, David, is it too much for TYLER HERRO? Is that a fair amount in today's NBA? That number sent shockwaves across Heat Twitter, and honestly, I'm a little surprised that people were that surprised by it.
You said 3 years, 109 million. I think you misspoke. 3 years, 149 million.
That's what I thought I said. 3 years, 149 million, 50 million a year.
Okay, that's where it's a lot to digest. So I probably a fair amount, or at least the expected amount, and that's why it is surprising that Heat fans would be so shocked by this. But we know what the going price is. He is an all-star player. We talked about it even as the season was nearing. Given his production, there was some potential for him to be considered an all-NBA level player. You know, if a couple players don't make the 65-game threshold, or maybe an injury happens and somebody gets taken out, like, I mean, as one of the 25 best players in the league this year in terms of production, you could say that he certainly was, based on the fact that he was an all-star. That's a pretty impressive category to be looked at and viewed through. And so that's what you're talking about. You're talking about getting a top 20, 25-ish player in the NBA, and the kind of money that they typically get. And 3 years for 149 doesn't seem like an exorbitant amount given that. But I think Heat fans are perhaps a little bit more aware of Tyler on that, and seeing how Miami has been criticized by that same fan base for making extravagant moves and without being able to get a title result. I think there's a lot of temerity about trying to get that done. And I would say I agree with it. I think you're looking at that amount, and as much as I think it's a fair market value for a player like Tyler, given his ability and what he's accomplished, that sticker price is way too much for my blood. I don't feel comfortable doing that, because I think Tyler's going to continue to get better. And so that makes it almost just seems like you're committing a lot of money to players like Bam and Tyler who have clear limitations. And I don't know that as good as they've been, I don't know that, again, maybe this is a different conversation of a superstar 1A kind of player, like a younger KD or a Donovan Mitchell or anybody like that.
Well, it's definitely a different conversation. Yeah.
But it's not. That's not the conversation you're having. You're looking at a team that's built around these two guys that have obvious flaws in their games, and being paid as much as we're talking about here doesn't sit right with me.
It is a lot of money to pay both Bam and Tyler a combined $100 million or more a year, which is what would happen. Bam's already signed the extension. He's going to start making $50+ million a year in 2026 for the 2026-2027 season. If TYLER HERRO signs this extension, if it's this summer or next summer, it doesn't replace any years on his contract. So he's under contract for $31 million next year, or this coming season, $33 million for 2026-2027, which is when Bam's $50 million annual contract starts kicking in.
Right.
So HERRO and Bam would only start making $50 million each in 2027, 2028. So 3 seasons from now. So part of me is like, who cares? It's 3 seasons from now. I don't care. If that's what it costs to keep TYLER HERRO, your homegrown all-star, here, then you just do it and you figure it out in 3 years. But then part of me is like, well, that's a dumb way to look at things. You got to be forward-looking if you're a front office. Maybe you didn't used to have to be, but in today's NBA, you definitely do.
Yeah.
3 years is the part that's getting overlooked here. People are the sticker shock of $50 million a year is the thing that people are like, you can't pay Tyler. It's not like you're paying him $50 million a year for 5 years. This isn't the Jaylen Brown Supermax. This isn't the Bradley Beal contract. 3 years, that contract starts to get tradable considering HERRO's age It's a shorter term deal. And for the right team, I don't know that anybody would be jumping up and down to pay Tyler Hero $50 million. But it wouldn't be an untradeable contract if you got to the point as the Heat where you said, hey, we gotta get rid of one of these $50 million guys because of where we are against the apron or whatever it might be. And you want to keep Bam, presumably. And so if you're looking to shop Tyler Hero, at 3 years, you could probably do it. Especially in 3, 4, 5 years from now, when the salary cap is going to be well over $200 million a team, right? And so a $50 million contract used to be 35% of your cap. It's going to be like 25% of your cap when this contract starts to kick in. And that's a lot more digestible than I think people understand.
If you can move Bradley Beal with a no trade clause, who's effectively a worse Tyler Hero, then you can move Tyler Hero in 3 years. I mean, that's absolutely a factor to consider here. So, that's the whole thing too, though. It's like you said, it's the right team. There are going to be teams like, it might be Miami that needs a guy like Tyler. You can probably shop him to another team that says, you know what, we want a guy who can average 25 for it. Right. Tyler fits the bill.
And space the
$50
floor.
million a year. It's not such a bad deal. So I can see it. Maybe it is just the initial shock of saying it's worth how much, and then you kind of get over that and you can think of it a little bit more logistically. But I mean, it all depends on what moves are made over the next 2 seasons. Correct. This team has to have like a plan and has to be able to at least secure or accomplish the first few steps of that plan. And I don't know what it is. Or maybe we can lay it out and what would be the best plan in order to justify that.
If you go get Durant, you're getting him, I don't know, 2-3 years. I don't know what Durant's plans are for the rest of his career, but he'll be 37 years old. I don't know how much longer he plans to play.
He's mercurial enough where it could be anything. Like he could retire tomorrow and be like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm accomplished. I have nothing left to prove. Or he could play until he's 50 years old and he's like, I just love to hoop. I'll never leave. You have to carry me off in a body bag. But the other part, like Terry Rozier will be off the books. Andrew Wiggins will be off the books. Like all these guys will be off the books. The only players under contract currently, if Hero were to sign that extension, the year that extension kicks in is Bam, Tyler, and Ware. That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. You can literally, if I'm doing the math right now, punching it into my spreadsheet, you could still have $60 million of cap space. If you have Hero, Bam, if you have Hero making 50, Bam making 55, Kel'el Ware under contract for $7 million, you'd still have $60 million of cap space that summer. Now, I mean, to sign 9 players, it's not as much as it sounds, right? Like you couldn't sign a max player at that point because you still have to figure out the rest of the roster, but you could sign some pretty good players. Now, again, I think you still need a 1A, and I don't know that Tyler Hero develops into that 1A over the next 3. Maybe he does, probably not. We kind of know what these guys are. They're good players, but you could, I don't know, maybe you could sign Durant and you would ultimately end up having to pay a lot of money for 1 year. Or I don't know, maybe it's not Durant, maybe it's just somebody else, but like whoever that player is, you'd pay a lot of money for 1 year and then maybe you figure out a way to get out of it. I don't know, but yeah, part of me is like, it's 3 years from now. Who cares? Just do it if that's what it costs. I also just want to say, I didn't get the indication. I don't know about you, David, but I didn't get the indication Bobby Marks was reporting that was going to happen.
Oh, no.
I think he's like, that's my expectation. It's sort of a best guess. And the other part of this is Hero's not eligible to sign the extension until October. So all these things about what you were just saying, which is absolutely right about what's the plan here, you probably have it figured out by October, right? Like you'll know if you've got Giannis or Durant or Ja Morant or Trae Young or Zion Williamson or whatever name is out there.
Exactly.
And if you do have that player, then you say, okay, we got everything we need. Let's sign Hero and just figure it out later. And you could definitely do that. Or you could say, we kind of need another year to figure things out and think about this. And Tyler Hero has already indicated that he'd be okay waiting a year to sign things because he could also make All NBA next year and potentially make even more money. So a bunch of stuff to go with the Tyler Hero extension, but we're going to move on to our next news item. More than a roster shakeup, do the Heat need a coaching staff shakeup? We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, well, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. The first person didn't answer. Did you wait around the phone? No, probably not. You moved on. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. One phone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer because your entire team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answering common questions and capturing leads, so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off on your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, well, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. That's Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
ESPN's Shams Charania reported on Monday that the Suns have narrowed their head coaching search to 2 finalists, a pair of Cavaliers assistants, meaning Chris Quinn is no longer a candidate for the job. So Chris Quinn stays in Miami. But also earlier this week, rumors that the Heat could pursue adding the Spanish coach Sergio Scariolo to its coaching staff. Scariolo was the head coach of Spain's national team, served as an assistant coach with the Raptors for 3 seasons, including the year that they won the championship in 2019. But then the Miami Herald reported that a source close to the Heat denied the report, stating that Scariolo is not a candidate for the Heat coaching staff. So was this just because they knew before the report was out there that Quinn was actually not getting that Suns job and that they did not have a vacancy to fill anymore? There's also reports that Scariolo is still flying to Miami and maybe might meet with the team. So we don't know what's really happening here. But we do know that Chris Quinn is coming back, at least for now. Unless the Knicks decide that they want to interview him, I guess. But my question to you is... Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I want to hear the question because, I mean, there's a lot to digest, even just about how assistant coaches from Miami tend to be viewed around the league. So I'm curious what your question is.
No, let's go there. Let's go there before I ask you because I'm asking you a follow-up. So let's stick to the news.
David Fizdale, it was a long tree who has been hired as a head coach, and that fizzled out pretty quickly. And I don't know, maybe he wasn't the right fit for the Knicks, but apparently neither is Tom Thibodeau, and he's a Hall of Fame coach at some point. So you look at how Chris Quinn is viewed, and I think he's done the time. He's put in the work. Even Dan Craig was viewed as a highly touted assistant, and then he went from the Clippers to Chicago, and he's kind of just floating around. He's kind of plateaued in terms of how he's viewed around the league. It doesn't seem like his name is on that list of up-and-coming coaches.
Right.
And then you look at, who Miami has on their coaching staff. It's all about getting their guys, Malik Allen, Caron Butler, these are eventually maybe Goran Dragic, Wayne Ellington, etc. These are the players, the former players turned coaches, and they act as they view that liaisonship as important rather than maybe X's and O's kind of knowledge. And I wonder if the rest of the league sees this is Erik Spoelstra at a high level, and then everybody else beneath him is at a really, really, really far below level. And it's just interesting to me that that's not typically the case. Like any coach that has achieved the kind of success that Spo has, generally his assistants are viewed in the same light, and that just hasn't been the case.
You think he would sprout a coaching tree at some point, and he hasn't, right? You think about Belichick and his success in the NFL, just constant coaching staff churn. Greg Popovich is probably the best example where, because the thing I would come to with the Heat is, well, they're so, to your point, they're such a family matter that they don't really have the connections outside the Heat. So the NBA is as much of a who thing as any other industry in the league, but that doesn't seem to impact San Antonio's assistants, right? Like every single one of Popovich's associate head coaches went on to get a head coaching job, despite the fact that most of their experience was basically just in San Antonio.
Yeah,
I think the Fizdale thing might be part of it in terms of it was just so quick. It so quickly did not work out for Fizdale that maybe that's part of it. I also think that we saw Juwan Howard go on to Michigan, and he was pretty successful there for a few years. That's college. I know it's different.
It is.
He just, I don't know. It feels like maybe part of it is it's not just Spoelstra, but it's also Pat Riley. And both of those guys are so in control of things that maybe there's not enough room for these associate coaches and these assistant coaches to breathe and put their thumbprint on things. Part of me also thinks that you just need one to work, and then all of a sudden it starts working. Chris Quinn got interviews for Charlotte last year. He was a finalist for this Phoenix, but it wasn't like he wasn't looked like at. He was one of the last 4 or 5 guys for this job. They narrowed it to those 2 Cavs coaches. So I think Chris Quinn will eventually get a job, and maybe he's the guy that bucks the trend a little bit. I don't know. I think maybe it's hard, man. I mean, I think part of this too is most coaching hires in the league are just previous head coaches, guys with previous head coaching experience. Right? It's just like it's Tibbs over and over. It's Budenholzer over and over. It's Frank Vogel over and over. It's Mike Brown over and over. It's like you don't really see a lot of top assistants even getting jobs that much anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, Budenholzer was an assistant for Pop. Brett Brown was an assistant. Ime Udoka. Like, how many head coaches have come from the Popovich coaching tree? And it's just strange. I mean, I think there might be something to your point, but I think Quinn probably does continue. I've heard, and I don't know if there was any direct reporting on this, that it was actually Quinn's decision that he pulled out of the race, but that doesn't seem likely either. I mean, as we've talked about before, there's 29 coaching opportunities out there in the league because there's Erik Spoelstra and there's just 29 other spots. So if any of those pop up, you got to take it. So if you're in the final running, I don't think you pull out for any reason unless I can't imagine. Because even if you just, again, to your point, if you get your foot in the door and you get that job, whether you have a disagreement with the front office or you're not their guy or they get replaced in a year or 2, it doesn't matter because already you have that reputation. It's like, okay, they've already shown that they can cut their teeth as a head coach. And that just leads to other increased opportunities.
Let me ask the follow-up question that I was going to ask before. Do the Heat need a coaching staff shakeup? Because I like the idea. The Scarillo thing was interesting to me because it was the first time in a long time that you heard an outside name, a name outside the usual Heat family as a potential. That kind of excited me, right? Especially with some European influence and bringing some of that stuff over with the motion offense and what they've been able to do. I would love some new ideas, and I think, frankly, Spoelstra would be into some new ideas too. This guy is an idea man.
I think you get to the point where you're probably too stagnant, and you're hearing the same voices over and over. Especially when it comes to Spo, as you said, his voice is so loud, and while he's pushing Malik and Quinny and Karan to offer their opinions, ultimately he would be like, "That's great, I love it. No, we're still going to do it this way," and no one's going to question him because he's Erik Spoelstra. One of my favorite books is World War Z, and it's just a fascinating look at it, and it's so different than the movie. And one of the theories, and I don't know if this is a theory that's out there. I don't read enough self-help books or the kind of business books about who moved by cheese to know whether or not this is a thing that's out there. But there's this idea that you have to have the 10th man or the 10th person, whatever you want to say, in terms of like if you have a group of people and you're all trying to come up with a solution, 9 people can come up with one solution and be in agreement. It's the role and responsibility of the 10th person to be like, you're completely way off base. You need to think about this differently, because from that little bit of bucking the trend, that's where actual change and growth can happen, and you can lead to ideas outside the box. And maybe this is the problem with Miami, is that they're so used to that one singular voice of Erik Spoelstra being there for so long that nobody else is saying, but why are we doing it this way?
Right.
And somebody else needs to come in, as to your point, from the outside and say, but that's great that you're doing it this way, but why are you doing it this way? Why don't we run it this way?
Or I have this idea, right? Because all the Heat's coaches played for Erik Spoelstra.
Right.
Their knowledge of coaching is largely Erik Spoelstra's coaching. So it obviously, you've got guys like Caron Butler who played all throughout the league, but even Butler would say the most successful, the best coach I've ever played with was Spo, so I'm not going to do anything the way that these other guys did it anywhere else I played. I'm going to do it the way Spo did it. And so, a lot of people are sort of, they have the same ideas. And I do think that there's a lot of strength in that commonality, right? There's a lot of strength in that singular thought process and an identity in that. At the same time, if you could find somebody who matches the Heat culturally things, everything that they stand for, with fresh ideas, for a team that was in the bottom 3 in offensive rating for the last 3 years, that team can really benefit from some fresh ideas. So look, Quinn, it looks like he's here for now, but they did lose a developmental staffer. They lost Kasib Powell to the Valkyrie, the new WNBA team in the Bay Area. So, you're not going to hire like the developmental coach guy isn't necessarily going to come with you with these grand new ideas. It's not really the idea of that position, but there will be at least a marginal change. I would think they would replace Kasib a little bit, but I do think that they could also expand the bench, right? You don't need a job opening and necessarily to add another. He'd actually have one of the smallest coaching staffs in the league, which is, again, is something that they take pride in, but maybe adding another voice could be beneficial. So we'll see what happens with Scarolio and some of these other guys, but that'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.